Well, hello, everybody. I know it's been a while. I'm finally feeling better. I'm actually going back to the gym now, which is great. For those of you who don't know, ever since I got my second vaccine, I've been struggling with a lot of different health issues in and out of the ER. And so for those of you faithful followers, just know I did not post content simply because I was out of content. I was not feeling well. So, and that kind of put us all a little bit behind, but we're all back now. And we have a special guest today. Trinity Maurer is with us again, formerly with Veterinarian Tactical Group. Trinity has also been a vet tech for 27 years. Say hi to everybody, Trinity.
Hello, how are you?
And of course, Trinity. We got Ryan. Ryan Matthias is a independent EDC canine handler with his canine Yokai. And currently, you tell us a little bit about you're working in the ports of Florida, right?
Yeah, Port Tampa and Port Canaveral. We're doing explosive detection for, for clients. I guess I really probably shouldn't divulge everything, but yeah, it's a mandated contract that the federal government came up with in 2001, shortly after 9/11.
Nice, excellent. Well, Trinity, Ryan, thank you for joining me today. And today's topic is going to be about your canine's comfort and making them comfortable. There's been some discussions that we've noticed where people are coming up with the idea that, well, this is a dog, they can just deal with it. And unfortunately, that's causing a lot of problems on deployments or even within your training. So we want to just briefly talk about this. And I also want to make a little disclosure here. I know personally, I've been accused of being so definitive with the psychology. And the truth is, I'm actually very neutral. I just want to look at the evidence and I want to try to make a judgment off the evidence, but I don't want people to think just because we disagree with you that we're calling you stupid or whatnot. Look, this is very complex. There's a lot to understanding a living animal, and we just want to make sure that we're being proactive, not giving into cognitive ease, always taking the easy road, and we're actually diving into some of the more complex stuff because in my personal opinion, that's how you become the best that you can be, is knowing everything. I just don't want to believe everything that's being thrown around in the canine industry. That's why we exist. It's not that we're trying to be judgmental. We're actually trying to be neutral, but just to say, hey, wait a minute. I want to question everything that we've been doing for the last 50 years. And does that comply? So I want to put that disclosure out there before we really dive into this. So initially, what had happened is I've had several officers reach out telling me about how their dog appears very uncomfortable, whether it's in a kennel at home, whether it's in the squad car because of a half kennel or something like that. So I want to talk about some of the different repercussions. So Ryan, you actually had a really good analogy when we were talking about this the other day. And that was about do you remember the idea that you came up with? Share with everyone what your thoughts are on that topic and let them know what the topic is, of course.
So in my view, especially like if you're say using a half kennel or a 3/4 kennel in your patrol vehicle. So you're putting a suspect, right there on the other side of this thin piece of sheet metal from the dog. What has the dog been trained to do is to get the suspect. I said this would be like putting the dog in a crate and then setting the dog's Kong tug, whatever that primary reward is, 5 feet in front of the crate, and then just leaving it there. And now the dog's hyper-focused. The dog sees it, it wants it, it can't get it. What does this do to the dog?
Well, and the truth is, I've actually have witnessed dogs do just that. When there's a suspect sitting right next to them, they're spinning and they're trying very hard to get over there. Now, just as another disclosure, we understand this is not all dogs. Not all dogs are going to behave this way. And remember, not everything applies across the board. We're not saying that. We're just saying there are some dogs. So if you have a dog that is hyper fixated on biting and the suspect that they just bit is sitting next to them, some dogs want to get another bite in. They want to have fun. So yeah, I could see that. And you also mentioned having the toy on the outside of the kennel, right?
Mhm.
That kind of goes in line with, I was talking to another trainer that had a fearful dog that they picked up from a client. I believe it was a pet dog. And it
Mhm.
took him like 3 days. And even then, the dog was a little bit interactive, but not its happy-go-lucky self at work. And so I asked him, well, what did you do to try to get the dog out of that fear? And he goes, well, I just sat there for, as long as I needed to. And I was very gentle and tried walking. And my argument to that type of method is that the fear is causing the behavior of cowering and not coming out of the shell and being happy-go-lucky. If you do not force the dog's brain to go forward, and when I use the word force, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not saying, I'm going to compulsion training, lasso the dog and jerk the crap out of him. That's not what I'm saying. But a gentle forward progress
I actually have
outside
a
of the
good
dog's
story
will.
about. I have a good story to tell you about doing that very kind of thing with yokai.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we were in canine school, we were training on the USS Wisconsin battleship from World War II. None of the dogs had ever been on so much as a canoe, let alone a battleship in the water. And we had to go down below decks to do training, and it was progressively further and further into the ship. So we're on the main deck, and we get to our first ladder well. Now, you and I both have been on ships. We know what ladder wells are like. They have an angle grade about like this.
Yeah.
So I take a couple steps down. I've got yokai on a 6-foot lead. She's behind me. I turn around and say, come on. And she's got the jake brakes on. No. So I, come on. And she wasn't having it. No way in hell. She started to like bite at the leash a little bit. And one of the instructors that was down at the bottom of the ladder well, he said, get your dog down here. So I started applying more forward pressure at the same time going, come on, girl, come on, you got this, come on. And eventually I applied enough pressure where her paws went off the first step and down onto the second. There was a little bit more of a like resistance, but then he said, don't stop. So I just kept going step, doing the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
By the time she got to like 3 steps from the bottom, she just jumped down, tail wagging. She was perfectly fine. We had no further issues with ladder wells going up or down for the remainder of the time we were on the ship.
Yes. Well, it's the resistance in the mind, right? And if you don't force them forward to come to a realization that this isn't as bad as what you think it is, then they're not going to take that step forward if you don't force them to do it in a very loving way, right? I call it the ratcheting technique. If the dog comes forward an inch, I go forward with them and then I lock it. I don't let them take it back. I want them to call, and then I wait them out. I let them begin to calm down with that one little baby step forward. And then I ask for another with a little bit of pull. The dog goes another inch and then I lock it. They don't get that inch back. That's how you get that dog to go forward. And Trinity, I'm sure that you've experienced this being in the veterinarian world, because you're dealing with a lot of dogs that they do not know you. They do not know the place, especially for first-time clients. Do you have any thoughts on this particular topic about kind of forcing the dog outside of their comfort zone to come to a realization that it's not as bad as what you think it is?
Yeah, so my current job now is at a spay and neuter veterinary hospital, and we see many COVID dogs. A lot of dogs come in with owners that have not done the proper socialization. They've not been out of the house, much less out of the property. Many of them do not see a regular veterinarian before they come to us for spay and neuter. So the number of dogs that I see that won't even enter the building, won't get out of the car. The owners cannot walk on a leash. And then they bring him into us, and I have to assess very quickly how fearful that dog is and whether or not they're going to bite me or my staff. So we do a quick assessment, see how that dog is going to react. Most of the time, after spending about 3 or 4 minutes in the room, I've got a good judge of what they're going to do once we get them in the back. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes they surprise me when they get through that door, but they come in the first door into the building, into like an entryway where we go over what's going to happen that day. I check the chart, description, all of that stuff. And then they have to come through another door into the back with me with a person they just met 3 minutes ago, on a different leash. The owner is walking out the other door as they're coming back with me. So I do kind of like what you do, Brian. You know, I'm like, come on, let's go. And then I open the door and I'm like, oh, look, an open door, we're leaving. And then we just run through that door pretty quickly. And then half the time they don't realize what's happened until that door already is closed behind them.
Right.
So that's kind of, you know, it's to me, it's the same situation.
Sure. Well, and this topic is actually kind of twofold, because in one situation, we're talking about the dog finding comfort. So in one instant, like a fearful dog, they're cowering in the corner because that's their comfort zone. Give me distance between that, which I think could potentially hurt me. So I'd rather have distance. So in that instance, you want to force the dog to deal with it in a loving manner so that they understand that it's not what you think. But then there are other times where you can't do that. For example, there's a lot of cops telling me I have a very large working dog and my department gave me a half kennel. This dog literally takes up the entire space. The dog can't spin to get the pent up energy. Those of you watching, which majority of our viewers are police officers, canine handlers, how many of you know that if your dog doesn't have the ability to spin, when you pull them out, they're going to try to release all that pent up energy? And so guess what? You potentially are delaying the stop. You potentially are not going to get a great deployment because your dog is so hyper fixated on getting all that energy out because they couldn't do it while they were trapped in that tiny little crate or kennel for 5 hours. It depends on the workload of the day. And so, you know, we tend to want to make the dog deal with it, but it ends up costing us in regards to our professionalism. If the dog doesn't deploy properly, you are definitely at the mercy of a good defense attorney. So what does that mean? Another case in point was originally when we were thinking of comparable ideas, I brought up, well, what about a dog that has like a tactical harness where it's solid material with the Molly group, it wraps all the way around the belly? Does that over time, especially in now that summertime's coming in 90-degree temperature, does that have an effect on the dog? Because we know that heat exhaustion, the dog's unconscious mind is going to say, something's not right here. So I need to shut down so that I can continue to live. And then Trinity, we were talking about this before we hit record. Can you share with our viewers what you were saying about that and how it relates to their ability to do their job in a moment's notice if they're dealing with uncomfortable heat problem?
Yeah, so fun fact, vests do not cause heat injury in dogs, whether that's just a regular tactical style vest like you were talking about or ballistic vests. The reason being is dogs do not sweat like humans do. So they have a little bit of sweat from their paw pads, they have a little bit of sweat coming from their groin and their armpits, but they don't produce sweat like we do. So if you're putting a vest on the dog, you're not stopping the ability for them to dissipate heat. What you could be doing, though, is if the vest is not measured properly, you could be restricting the ability for them to breathe efficiently and get the heat out of their lungs and their body, because that's how they cool themselves the fastest and the best. So vests do have to be measured properly. They have to be able to work in the vest, because if they're too busy worried about balancing the ballistic vest or they've never had a tactical style harness on before, then that's an immediate change that they have to overcome pretty quickly to do what you are asking them to do.
Yeah.
Working in the vest, they do build up a little bit of extra heat from the weight of a ballistic vest. Tactical vest, not so much. It just depends on the weight distribution of the vest on the body itself. Most dogs that are already fit and conditioned are going to be able to adjust to that on the fly. But as a handler, you need to pay a little bit more attention to them in a heavier style vest to make sure that you pick up on those subtle signs of heat injury pretty quickly. What we are finding out is that the environment the heat outside, the humidity levels, and the style of work. So whether they're muzzle fighting, whether they're on a bite and they have to bite and hold for several minutes before you get there and afterwards, them being able to not pant and have their tongue covered, which offers an evaporative kind of cooling, is what really increases that risk of heat injury, not necessarily wearing the equipment itself.
Now, I think I did a podcast with you and Janice Baker from Veterinarian Tactical Group, and you guys were telling me about the myths of heat exhaustion, and or that even the books, that it's typically the signs that they're teaching people are a little too late. Is that, am I remembering this correctly?
Yes. So the signs that are in the textbooks from veterinarians that are being pushed into canine books, handler books, things like that, are very late signs. Those include staggering, stumbling, seizures, shock, bloody diarrhea, things like that. And the reason those signs are in there is because that's what we saw when they came to the vet hospital. But what we need to start looking for, and this is what is hopefully being taught now, but it is in the process of being studied, is the signs of thermal stress. So what we're seeing are dogs, if you watch pretty closely, is you're seeing shade-seeking behavior. You are, if the dog is trying to get underneath a tree, underneath a vehicle, sometimes if there is no shade in the area, they'll even use the handler's shade off of their body to kind of hide in. And you may not necessarily realize it in the beginning. It may be after you throw a ball 10 or 15 times. It may be after they just got their reward, and you're coming out of that drive phase into the recovery phase, and the dog is shopping for other places to be instead of staying right there with you, wanting to engage with you and play and chase the Kong, that kind of a thing. I know my own personal dog, after we get off the rubble pile, after we've just had a training, she is dragging me to where underneath a tree is, where there's shade, because the rubble's hot. She just worked a 4-person problem that maybe only took her about 10 minutes at the most. By the time we started, she found the victims, we reset, sent her again, had her last reward, and we're walking off the pile. So it's not necessarily the length of work, it's the intensity of the work. It's the ability to be able to sniff and not pant, because they can't sniff very well if they're panting so hard. So it takes more effort to be able to do that. And then depending on where you're working, you may see your dog kind of dick off a little bit and find some shade while they're supposed to be searching. That's telling you that they're getting a little bit too hot. If you have, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Finish.
If you have a dog that is super toy driven, toy focused, their toy is their life, they will kill themselves for their toy. If they don't want that toy anymore, they don't care that you have it, that's a sign of thermal stress and that they need to be cooled off. Because if they have a toy in their mouth, they can't pant, they can't evaporate that heat off of their tongue, they can't move that air efficiently out of their mouth. So they are more interested in self-preservation than they are their toy that they would die for. That's a huge issue as well, that not a lot of handlers may pick up on, because they're like, what the hell's wrong with this dog? You love your toy. They might not be picking up on the fact that their dog is pretty hot and that they need to either stop work or cool them off, and or both.
Yeah. And I wonder how many handlers out there actually correct their dog for not wanting the toy because they don't know that this information exists.
I have a
Probably
question
a lot. Yeah.
I have a question for Trinity, kind of regarding this subject, something I've been told multiple times, and I want to ask her if this is correct or not. So
Okay.
Can I have a minute? Yeah, Trent, I've been told over and over that, do not put your dog up in an air-conditioned vehicle when you're working or after your dog works. If you do that, you're babying your dog, you're preventing your dog from climatizing to what it's doing, and you're ruining your dog. What is your thoughts on this?
So I've heard the same thing, and so there was a study that was done by US SOCOM, and they found that cooling the dog in between bouts of work actually makes them last longer during the day. Now, whether that is with a water and a hose, whether that is with whatever body of water you can find in your environment, whether that is an air-conditioned vehicle, getting them to cool off the fastest way possible, letting their body not cook as long, actually increases fitness and conditioning, and it increases endurance and allows them to work longer and harder during the day. The study that they did, they took dogs and they used air conditioning, cooling mats, things like that. And then they took another separate group of dogs and didn't. They just let them passively cool down in a crate outside for 30 minutes. Now, all dogs return to a baseline temperature of about 103, 104, because we know that's safe, within 30 minutes. Now, obviously, the dogs that were facilitated cooling, whether that be AC, water, things like that, cooled off faster. And they found while they were running dogs on a treadmill, because studies have to be controlled instead of in the environment, which is great, they found that the dogs that were not actively cooled down tapped out of the treadmill and showed signs of heat injury faster than the dogs that were cooled down in between those bouts. So that tells me that whether my dog is hot or not, if I can cool them down after they're done working, then they're going to last longer through the day, especially in hotter, more higher humidity environments. You're not hurting the dog by cooling them down. You're actually helping them, because the body's physiology, all of their organs, their blood, their tissues have to remain within a certain temperature range, and it's different for each dog, for a certain amount of time in order for body damage to not happen. And that's why dogs with heat injury have to go into the hospital, because the organs shut down, the proteins denature, all of that stuff happens. So if you can cool them down as fast as possible with whatever means you have, you're actually helping your dog. Recovery versus acclimation is completely different. Now, acclimating your dog to a working environment comes with allowing them to work in that environment. Fitness and conditioning, because if your dog needs to work, Ryan, where you are, where it's 95% humidity and 90 degrees or hotter in the summertime, and you need your dog to work for 6 or 7 hours during that time period, then you should be training your dog to be able to work in that time period. That also, training programs also come with a recovery phase, and that's where your cooling comes in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
You not only answered it, you more than answered it. And I hope it makes it very clear to the viewers, because I know a lot of guys out there who are following the garbage they've been told.
Yeah.
And I won't say I've argued it. I've used myself as the example. Like you said, I work in Florida. It's hot as hell here, humid as hell. And we're working on blacktop cargo yard with no shade.
Right.
I keep the AC in my truck, and I will run my truck for a whole 8 hours or however long I'm there. I keep the AC set at like 67, 68 degrees. And after I have my dog out, we might run, we might do a search where we search like 200 pallets.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I go put my dog back up, and I leave her in there for maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And my dog has only gassed out one time.
Mm-hmm.
in the year that we've been doing this here in Florida. And I've told them, like, I'm only one data point among billions. I understand that. However, I have a Malinois, a dark colored Mal, and this is our conditions, and this is what's going on. Maybe you should take that without the grain of salt.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and then that's why I said acclimation is different than recovering, than cooling them off afterwards, because you can work them as hard as they can work, as many times as they can work in that day, but they are eventually going to gas out, even with cooling them down in between those bouts of work. But the studies have shown that they gas out faster if you don't cool them down in between those bouts of work. Now, balancing the fitness and conditioning and the working portion of that with cooling them down, a lot of people call that work rest cycles. The problem with those is that every dog is different. So if you have a policy that says you can only work your dog during these hours for this long during this time, and then you have to stop, well, then you're essentially only allowing them to work during those certain parameters. Mm-hmm. And as we know, with climate, that doesn't necessarily happen. We'll have really cool days. We'll have really, really hot days. And we need to make our dogs fit enough to be able to work, and no matter the environment, no matter how many hours, because the powers that be, our admin, are like, no, you have to do this, 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 and this, and this, and I need this, 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 and this done before you can clock out and say you go home, not necessarily taking account to how the dog is doing during those time periods. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually, you just touched on a really amazing point, because there are people that are making decisions that think something is going on, but there's actually something else going on behind the scenes. And it's all about providing what your specific dog needs. Now, I know a ton of working dogs, shepherds, Mals, Dutchies, that are fine in like a half kennel in a squad car. They're fine. Typically, they're smaller build so that they can get that pent up energy out. And not to mention, I've talked to many canine handlers that when their dog is cramped in the squad car for 5 hours, when they do come out, just to reiterate, the dog was more focused on stretching their legs because they've been cramped, and then trying to get rid of all of this crazy energy because they're just go, 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 go. You know, I can't tell you how many times when I had my police canine academy that I would have people with these crazy dogs. I mean, we had crazy dogs in our kennels too. And if they did not get that energy out, then they definitely wanted to get it out when you brought them out. And we were trying to simulate, hey, you've been in the squad car for 4 hours and now boom, you got to go right back to work. And I wanted to judge, is this dog going to have to make a lap around the facility to get that energy out? If that's the case, then we need to plan for that, because an uncomfortable dog will figure his needs, his or her primary needs, like muscular comfort, not having muscle cramps, all this other stuff. The dog's unconscious mind is going to tell the dog, you must do this before anything else. You know, what about, you know, I frequent the gym a lot. I love working out. I've been working out since I was a kid. And there's something to be said about stretching properly. Now, I know there's a lot of debate, stretch out before or after, or during, or hours after, or hours before. Either way, I know that stretching is good for me. Before I go for a run, I stretch my legs out. When I don't stretch my legs out, I have more pain, and it's more difficult for me to get off the couch the next day, because my muscles are doing some really weird stuff. You know, there's, you talked about breaking down different proteins, and you've got like different acid buildup and all that other stuff. And when you work and stretch and have a good diet, taking enough water to process the proteins, my muscles feel better when I do it properly. So I think the main point in this video that the three of us wanted to put out there to the viewers is that there are some things that you must do to accommodate your dog's needs, but then there are other things where you can't baby them, and you've got to force the mind forward to come to a new realization. I think that this is a very important topic because we're hearing this from a lot of different people. So that's why I wanted to post this video. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to make sure that they understand that there is an important distinction. You know, if you sometimes may have to push the dog into something for its own good.
Yes.
That doesn't mean forcing the dog into something for its own bad. There's a big distinction.
Ooh, that's there. Good. Yeah, I like that. Say that one more time.
The dog's needs come before the handler's needs.
Yep.
You cannot force the dog into something for the dog's bad. You can only force the dog into something for the dog's own good.
Yes, I like that a lot.
And what I just thought of was when you were talking about some dogs may not do well in that smaller kennel in the vehicle. Forcing the dog, as an example, into being in there is not for the dog's own good. That's for the handler's good, or maybe the agency's good, or the community's good. Right. But it's not for the good of the dog. And that's where a distinction has to be made.
Yep. Awesome. Great information. So viewers, one of the constructive pieces of criticism that we have gotten recently is that our videos tend to be kind of long, 30 minutes to an hour. And because of everybody's time, your time is valuable. We want to make sure we honor that. So we're going to do our best to have easier to view videos, meaning they're going to be shorter. We're going to cut out some of the fluff, get straight to the point, fly through it so that you guys can get on with your day. But we don't want to stop bringing truthful, relevant questions, ideas, and knowledge to the table. So we're going to go ahead and get off here. Again, we're really trying hard to keep these videos shorter so that you guys don't have to waste a bunch of time, watching videos. And we're going to work really hard to get straight to the point. Also, we are going to be working on creating smaller videos to purchase in regards to dog psychology, kennel management, health and fitness, possibly, and other videos specific to different jobs. So Ryan is going to be creating some classes for independent canine contractors. I'm going to stick with my arena, which is the dog psychology and behavior. And then if Trinity decides to join the team, then we're going to be talking about, health and stuff like that. And then we also have another person, but I can't mention their name yet because we haven't had a formal conversation. So we've got a lot of people about ready to bring some good information to you all. So look for that. And thank you so much for tuning in. Trinity, thank you for joining us today. Ryan, as always, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you, Trin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And for all you viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. Without you, we wouldn't have an audience to share what we're learning and what we've learned. So I want to thank you. And until next time, stay safe, watch your six, and Semper
Semper Fi.
Fi.